Hi guys, my name is Will McAfee, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the government's mistreatment of marijuana. Today, 36 out of the 50 states have legalized marijuana. That's 72% of the nation. 72% of the nation has legalized marijuana, yet we still don't have a federally funded test on the substance. This process of legalizing marijuana, even in these 36 states, has been a very long, tedious process full of discrimination and ignorance by the U.S. government. Marijuana has been treated like heroin when it's truly medicine. The government's treatment of marijuana has directly contradicted multiple researches and multiple projects researching marijuana. And I'll show you a couple examples of those. Unless I cite a separate source, all of my examples will be from Marijuana's Historical Timeline, the author being procon.org on December 4th, 2020. Before marijuana was outlawed, it was legal everywhere. It was sold in drugstores all across the nation, and it had many, many consumers. The majority of these consumers was minorities, and at this time, America was not kind to minorities. They were very racist and very xenophobic, and I believe that's one of the factors in why they wanted to make marijuana legal. In 1936, right before marijuana was made illegal, the American Medical Association came to the government and they opposed the decriminalization of marijuana. They said that marijuana is a highly unknown substance, and this substance has potential benefits for psychological and medical side of the medical field. They didn't feel they had enough information on the substance to make it illegal. But 6 months later, the United States government made marijuana legal. And when they made marijuana legal, they treated it very, very harsh compared to a lot of the other substances around at the time. While marijuana was becoming fully illegal, the U.S. government released a film called Reefer Madness. In this film, 2 high school kids try marijuana for the first time, and they go on a rape and murder rampage. Obviously, that's quite ridiculous, and obviously, it's complete fantasy. All of the characteristics of marijuana portrayed in this film are completely false. The U.S. government is supposed to give its people information they can rely on, information they can trust, not poorly produced scare tactics in the form of movies. I find it very ironic that the U.S. government funds a film bashing marijuana, yet they still to this day have not federally funded a test on marijuana. Earlier in this speech, I said that marijuana was treated like heroin. Well, the government literally, and I mean literally, treated marijuana far harsher than it treated heroin. In the Harrison Act, heroin was regulated. Heroin was allowed for the American people to use under prescriptions. You could buy it at your local drugstore if you had a prescription. That's insane. Yet marijuana was completely illegal, and the possession of marijuana gives you a federal charge. That information is from A Brief History of Marijuana Law in America by Scott C. Martin on April 20th, 2016. A simple comparative test between marijuana and heroin would show you that heroin is one of the most dangerous substances known to man, and marijuana makes you sleepy. Today, the U.S. is battling an opium epidemic. Opium is pretty much heroin, and marijuana has yet to be federally tested. In 1940, the mayor of New York called for testing of marijuana in the state, and this test was called the LaGuardia Report. This report said that marijuana is far less dangerous than they previously thought, and it even has potential for medical use. This was completely disregarded by the U.S. government, and 5 years later, the U.S. government passed the Boggs Act in 1951, and this established a minimum sentence for simple possession of marijuana, and this minimum sentence was 2 to 5 years. A little bit later, in 1968, the United Kingdom released a test on marijuana claiming that it was far less harmful than many other drugs and even less harmful than alcohol. And they immediately followed this research with reducing their marijuana charges and sentencing by 50%. The U.S. government responded to that by making marijuana a Schedule I drug. Whenever they made marijuana a Schedule I drug, they labeled it as having no medical qualities and it being extremely dangerous and extremely addictive. Making it a Schedule I drug makes it illegal to federally test the substance, which is very, very hard. It's very hard for a drug to move out of Schedule I if it can't be tested. A year later, in 1971, President Nixon declared the war on drugs. He said, "Drugs are public enemy number one, and we must come together to combat it." However, this is not his true means. This was a lie. In a recent interview with his former advisor, John Inkerman said, and I quote, "The Nixon White House had two enemies, anti-war left and black people. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be anti-war or black, but by getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt these communities." Remember, this was 16 years after desegregation. I cannot even imagine the racial influences on the acts before desegregation. This information was from Nixon's Drug War, an excuse to lock up blacks and protesters continues, by Forbes, and the author was Eric Sherman on March 23, 2016. Still today, the U.S. has extremely aggressive laws on marijuana, and they have not changed their view on the substance in over 90 years. The government has treated marijuana unfairly, unreasonably. It was criminalized in the 30s, and there was not enough research to say otherwise. But today, there is. Marijuana has proven medical benefits, yet it is still treated with as much severity as heroin. It is far past time for a change in America. The longer marijuana is mistreated, the longer Americans are going to be misinformed and manipulated. Research and data does not support the status quo. So what are you supposed to do about it? Change it. You are the future of this country. Write to your congressman, sign petitions, or even just talk to your friends on the injustice of this issue. You can do something about this. You can do something about this. You have a choice to make. You have the information. You have the influence. Will you make that choice? Thank you.